Hello, BookTube. Recently, this channel reached a mind-boggling 5 million views. and I guess that kind of metric is visible to the rest of the world, to viewers, because I learned about it from you rather than telling you myself. And a number of people, a great number of people, suggested a Q&A. So I put out the call for questions, and once again, you did not disappoint. So I'm going to go through those 5 million Q&As right now. And as usual, the usual caveats. I copy all of these questions over from the video where I called for them to a Google document, and I clean that document up, get rid of all of the posted 2 days ago, that sort of thing. If in the process of doing that I omit your question, it's not that I'm avoiding your question. You can feel free to ask it next time. Also, I'll break the videos up into 30-minute installments, depending on how long, how many questions there are, and how many. I barely glance at these things. So, the first one is from Gerald's Bliss, and it is, congratulations, Steve. I hope you don't mind a couple of personal questions. Never in a million years. I'm a chatty old shut-in. I love hearing you talk about your sainted Ma. She really does sound like a formidable person, and I'm so glad that you two became great friends. Have you ever written about her and published it? No. If so, where can we find it? Maybe you should consider writing a memoir. Well, I have considered writing a memoir. I mean, Sainted Ma would not be in it, or not much in it, but I have considered doing that. Anyhow, what was your mother's opinion of Deb? Is Deb anything like her? Do you think Dame Deb might appreciate a pen friend? Sainted Ma wasn't anything like Deb, and they never met. As far as I know, they never met. They were totally different people. Dr. Bacon says, congrats, Steve. What an amazing milestone. I've gone back and watched many of your old videos and have developed a deep fondness for Malin and Lucy. Bless them both. Thank you. Those of you who don't know what Dr. Bacon is talking about, those were my previous dogs. Malin and Lucy were my previous dogs, and they made appearances in videos. They weren't very active. They were very old by the time I started this BookTube channel, so you could often see Malin in videos just right next to me on the couch, on this couch right here. The irony is that Lucy, my basset hound, never wanted to be even an inch away from me, and so she's in every video. You just can't see her because she's right under my elbow. But anyway, you have questions. Let's see here. My questions. Number one, I noticed in your book repair video that people sometimes mention using tape to reinforce can yellow or destroy paperbacks and dust jackets, but it doesn't look like any of your books suffer from this. Have you encountered any problems with this method? I'd like to start reinforcing my own books. Well, okay. I am not saying that my reinforcement method is archivally sound. I am not saying that. I am saying I found a $1 paperback and I'm reinforcing it so that it will withstand a reading by me. I'm not saying that my reinforcement makes it archivally secure. And that has tended to be the people who have tended to leave comments saying, please don't do this to your books, this person doesn't know what he's talking about, haven't watched the video. They only see the equipment, and they maybe do have archival preservation in mind. B, you are correct, sir. The visual evidence is that the damage that the archivally minded commenters on those videos are talking about doesn't, in fact, happen. The observable evidence in my own actual eyes is that it doesn't happen. Maybe they're worried that it will happen over a century, but if you're worried about something that's going to happen in a century's time, you're wasting time worrying about something you're not going to be involved in. And C, C is, if you want to start reinforcing your own books, well, there is another option. There's an option that I have never bothered to do. I've never bothered to learn how to do it. I'm sure that it's fairly easy. Those plastic library dust jacket protectors are available. You can get them, and if you were to shop around and figure out what you're doing, you could, I'm sure, buy them in bulk. And they can be sized to fit paperbacks. They can be sized to fit any type of hardcover. And there, you're not attaching any tape to any kind of dust jacket. And I'm sure that over the long run, that's probably just as cheap a thing. My method was only developed by using tools at hand. I had tape and scissors at hand, so that's the only reason that it grew. if you're looking to just start, you might want to look into that first, or maybe we look into it together, since it might work for me too, and might be a lot of fun to figure out how to do it and what the good bargain is. And then question number 2. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. I'm a little bit distracted by your opening comment. My girls were wonderful. They were wonderful, and I saw them right to the end. And it's a little bit weird to think about that when I've got a girl behind me who also doesn't like to be more than a few inches away from me, and who's in the prime of health. It's just weird to think about that. So it threw me for a minute. Question number 2 is, speaking of your old videos, you've mentioned traveling with a footlocker, which contained 16 to 17 books dear to you. It's right there. It's literally at my feet. Would you mind sharing a few of the works that served as your traveling companions? Well, I would. I wrote a post about this on my old literary blog, Steve Reads, that I'm always wondering if I can find it, or if one of you can find it. I think one of you did find it a while ago and sent me the link, and I just didn't save it, or I didn't rescue it and put it on stevedonoghue.com, which is, I now have a website, stevedonoghue.com, that is all of my literary excrudences, and it should be on there. I just don't know that I've done it yet. Thanks so much, Tori from Maple Shade. Oh, which is, yes, Maple Shade, New Jersey, which, as you say, is blissfully far away from the Jersey Juice Boys. And the Jersey Juice Boys sort of date me, because that's about 5 years ago. It's New Egg Township, where a group of young YouTube weightlifters who all shot to popularity and who made precious little bones. They never actually said it. In fact, at first, 5 years ago, they all these fresh-faced kids who all knew each other, they all denied it. But it was pretty obvious why they quickly got the name the Jersey Juice Boys, because if you're a skinny kid from New Egg Township and you've been lifting weights for a year, seriously, for a year, and then once you get a YouTube career and it starts to take off and you start to get 1 million subscribers or 1 million plus subscribers, suddenly you're posting, you're deadlifting 300 pounds. Okay, then 400 pounds, then 500 pounds, and I'm not waiting 5 years for this to happen, and then 600-pound deadlifts. Anyway, Chris Bianchi says, congrats, Steve, let's keep it going up. Number 1, there's a barrage of questions, of course. I was wondering what your thoughts were on the 1938 film, The Dresser, or 83 film, The Dresser. I love Albert Finney's performance. Yes, it's a classic movie, classic performance. Number 2, do you have a favorite Edward Albee play? No. Number 3, do you have a favorite Eugene O'Neill play? Well, I do, but it's not because of a play. It's Long Day's Journey into Night, which is fairly unendurable in the theater, but the movie version, naturally, I love. And number 4, do you like Patricia Highsmith's writing? I do, usually. Yeah. I do, usually. Sometimes I think it's pretty easy to tell when she's coasting on autopilot for a deadline or for a paycheck, but that's to be expected from any working writer. It's not exclusive to her. Let's see here. Balin321 says, congrats, Steve. May you reach 6 million soon so we can keep asking questions. I don't think we're going to reaching 6 million views anytime soon. Number 1, I've recently read the autobiography of Benvenuto Cellini and Lucy Hughes Hallett's biography of Gabriele D'Annunzio. I've immensely enjoyed both books about misbehaving Italians. Is that a whole genre? Misbehaving Italians? Somebody call up Tom at Tom LA Books. But I don't know where I should go next. Do you have any biographical recommendations in a similar vein of these 2 books? The subject of the book does not have to be Italian, though that would be a big plus. I do indeed have a recommendation, and lucky enough for you, D'Annunzio is a big part of it. It's M, Son of the Century, by Antonio Scarlatti, which has just been translated into English by Anne Milano Appel. It'll be out probably today, or sometime real soon. It's coming out this month, and it's great. It's a 600-page biography about the youth and impressionable 20s and early 30s of Benito Mussolini, who was pretty much the ultimate misbehaving Italian. And a large chunk of the early part of that book is given over to D'Annunzio. But lots of other stuff as well. It is a great, great novel. It is fantastic. So I highly, highly recommend it. And then number 2, it sometimes feels that American democracy and the Western world seems to be between the Scylla of far-right politics and the Charybdis of the identitarian left. Yes, I refer to them as the alt-right and the alt-left. They are on either ends of the ideological and reality political spectrum, and they are steadily moving, both of them, towards the middle where the rest of us live. And neither one is any worse than the other. The alt-left is just as bad as the alt-right. Uh, both terrify me in their own way. I don't doubt it. They are both terrifying. And I worry that to fight against the far right, you inevitably fall into the grips of the identitarian left and vice versa. I totally sympathize. I totally sympathize. And the thing that one of the many things that they share in common, the alt-right and the alt-left, the main thing they share in common is a fascistic worldview. They don't just hold their opinions, they want to force you to hold their opinions too, or kill you. If you insist on having your own opinions, they want to kill you. The alt-right wants to do it with guns. The alt-left wants to do it by making you starve to death, making you completely unemployable so that you can't earn even $1.50 a week to give yourself a bare caloric minimum of food intake, much less rent or health insurance or car payments or anything like that. But one of the other things that they share in common is that their worldview is totalitarian. They are completely governed by an ideology. The reality, in other words, has been superseded by their ideology. And that means that if you aren't in either one of those camps, then yes, the minute you just naturally insist on a feature of observable reality, you're gonna have one of the other two groups is gonna be saying, yeah, come to us, you're so close. It's a very creepy feeling, a very creepy feeling. I was watching just lately, the Senate Judiciary Committee was having confirmation hearings for one of the most qualified individuals ever to be considered for a seat on the Supreme Court. And one of the most loathsome individuals in the history of American politics, Ted Cruz, a figure who is reviled on a visceral gut level by literally every single person who knows him, including especially his family. And we know this because it was filmed. You can see the revulsion on their faces. They hate him. Everyone in Congress hates him. He is a thoroughly repulsive individual. And in the course of those confirmation hearings, he asked that Supreme Court nominee, what is a woman? And she responded by saying, I'm not a biologist, so I'm not going to be able to answer. And right away, I felt the tentacles of the Ted Cruz part of the alt-right saying, come to us, because like every single person in the country who isn't an ideologue, I watched that moment and thought, this is absolute insanity. This is absolute insanity, and Ted Cruz, I hate to say it, it almost scalds my tongue, but Ted Cruz is completely right to want to know if someone that the Congress is considering putting on the Supreme Court for life thinks you need to be a biologist to define what a woman is. So I know what you mean. No matter what you do, you run the risk of gaining allies that you don't want. Anyway, you had a question somehow or other. How do you see this going? Do you think we'll get through this, or are we doomed? Will the current situation simply be game over of democracy and the West? That's a lot of different questions. The answer to the last question sort of supersedes all the others. And the answer to the last question, will the current situation simply be game over for democracy in the West, is yes. And it's going to happen sooner than you think. These things always do, just like the tip over into the catastrophic part of climate change. Once it starts to happen, it will gain speed. It will happen fast. And I am not extrapolating. I am saying, look at the copious records that we have of Germans and Austrians living in the 1930s. They thought these people are crazy. They thought most of us are not crazy. They thought a little compromise with these people just to get them out of my hair, I guess, will be okay. They thought these people won't be in power. They thought, well, even if these people are in power, they won't be in power for long, and it won't affect me. We already know what this looks like. So I'm afraid, do you think we will get through this, or are we doomed? Well, we'll get through it, but that doesn't mean we're not doomed. Anyway, greetings from Flanders. Oh, lovely Flanders. The Bookish Knitter. Oh my. BookTube royalty. When I saw 5 million in the title, I assumed it was referring to the number of videos you'd made. Very close. I think we're at 5,000 videos. I haven't checked, but that's another occasion for a Q&A, which is highly plausible as well. Congrats, Steve. And of course, my question is, when are you going to have the Queen of Category Romance back on your channel for a live show? Yes, we need to do a live show. Absolutely. And I need to guest on the Categorically Romance podcast. It's been a while since you had me mansplaining things to you and Bree. So yes, I agree to both. Well, I agree to the one, and I'm imposing the other. Let's see here. Claudia Ferreira says, "Hi, Steve. It is such a pleasure to follow you that I never believe you're giving up going away for good moments." Well, I want to stress again, I didn't have a going away moment. Not permanently. I was incredibly frustrated that I had a live stream that I couldn't stop and that YouTube couldn't stop. But when I said that might result in me eliminating my channel, I meant that might be what it would be necessary for me to make videos. Would be that I couldn't make. I thought for a minute there was a chance that I wouldn't be able to have a channel unless I nuked the channel that was just locked in permanent broadcast. Turned out that wasn't true. But anyway, let's see here. It would be an all-new universe I can't imagine. For now, I just want to... Well, you should start to imagine it, because once YouTube finds out what's going on here, they will shut it down. For now, I just want to know if you can recommend books that, in your opinion, are better than the movie adaptation. You're always defending the opposite. Well, I am. It's true. I ought to make a starter kit of books that are actually better than the movie. I should probably do that. I'm thinking of, like, for instance, any movie version of Tolstoy. They all fail. So whether it's Anna Karenina or War and Peace, they all fail. Any movie version of Les Miserables, obviously they fail for obvious reasons. You do not want Eddie Redmayne getting off his oxygen container long enough to try and sing. But also smaller things like Jaws, for instance. I think the book is immensely more adult than the movie. No, it's not a great work of literature, but it is much better, I think, than the movie. The movie is so ham-handed, and the book is not quite so much. But I could make a long list of other things. Mostly the movie is better, but I'll add that to the list for our revived starter kits. Flora should be reading says, "Congrats, Steve. Here's to 5 million more views. I have 2 questions and a small mention. I'll start with the mention. You've said recently that you've been on BookTube for 5 years, but I'm pretty sure it's 6 since you began making videos in early 2016. Like I said in an earlier video this week, I can't do even simple arithmetic. You're probably right. Unless you don't count 2016 since it was such a bizarre year, which I don't understand. My questions are, what do you make of this year's Oscars?" I've been asked this a million times. And number 2, what do you think about Roger Scruton, his ideas, his works? Okay, well, Roger Scruton's easy. I've always thought he was incoherent and a little lightweight, and I've never really understood the intellectually serious people I know who credit him with being this immense intellectual mentor of theirs. I can only assume that does not translate to his written work. That quality was probably true of him in individual face-to-face encounters. I've never seen it in any interview or in anything that he's ever written. And as to number 1, what do I think of this year's Oscars? I think you're probably thinking of one particular moment, which infuriated me the same way that I'm not allowed to say that it infuriated me, because if I say that a member of the audience who's being razzed by a comedian on stage should not be able to stand up, walk onto stage, and slug the comedian and not face repercussions of a legal and a social and a professional nature. If I say that shouldn't be possible, there's a huge swath of social media that is ready to call me a racist. It was a simple thing like that. And you'll notice that in my description, I did not mention skin color. But also, the show itself was, apart from that famous moment that made history, the show itself was deeply distasteful. I don't know if Oscar fans will love it anyway, but I watched the whole thing, or a large chunk of it. I've now watched pretty much you can watch the whole of the broadcast if you want to, and it's a deeply spiteful ceremony steeped in hatred. There are huge chunks of the watching audience that the whole of the ceremony openly hates, which makes it no different than any other parts of the scorched earth culture war. But it makes for an Oscar ceremony that I don't know why anybody would want to watch it. But to me, apart from the slap heard well in the world, to me the most interesting part of it was there's a moment in the Zack Snyder 10-hour cut of the Justice League. There's a moment that I think is quintessential dude bro filmmaking, just about as quintessential as it gets. It wasn't in the Joss Whedon cut of the Justice League. It's the moment where Barry Allen, the Flash, enters the Speed Force this supernatural force that allows him to rewrite reality, I guess, so that the Justice League have failed in the course of in the climax of the movie. The Justice League has failed. They have failed to stop the bad guy from detonating a quantum bomb that kills them all and rewrites reality. And the wave of that explosion hits Barry Allen's character, the Flash, who can run really fast, and he enters the Speed Force, travels much faster than the speed of light, and rewrites reality. It's kind of the conclusion to Superman the Motion Picture, only in the Snyderverse. It's beautifully done, and it was shown at the Oscars because it's the moment that won Hans Zimmer his Oscar for the music that plays while that moment is happening, which I admit is arrestingly beautiful. The whole moment is arrestingly beautiful. The only distracting thing about the visuals of the moment is that not only does the actor, Ezra Miller, have no idea what it looks like to run. He cannot run. He's not able to run. But also, when they pull out and there's a little animatronic model doing the running so that you can see the full effect of the Speed Force reversing time, even the model is not running correctly. I don't know why this is so hard to do. I don't know why it's so hard to do. You have these actors on invisible wires for their wire fights all day anyway. Put wires on them. Put them on a treadmill with nothing on either side, just a flat treadmill, and have them run as fast as they can, and just film that. That will look natural. But instead of this weird stuff. But I showed the moment. The moment became instant dude bro iconography the minute the Snyderverse film hit the movie theaters. The only thing that any dude bro could think about or talk about was that moment. I actually showed it to Mark Richardson up in Vermont. I was trying to convey to him that this has become a cultural touchstone already. And typically he was like, but the thing that makes it quintessential the ultimate dude bro film moment is that when the Flash is summoning these immense powers that we didn't know he had, that to recurl time, so that he cannot be defeated, nor can anyone that he wants to win. No one. He can rewrite reality when he wants to, and he can stop it at a particular moment and start it at a particular moment. So he's entering the Speed Force in order to stop the universe from being annihilated by Darkseid and his legions of parademons. And he doesn't know if it's going to work, and he's got to reach his friends who've all been obliterated just an instant before. But when he enters the Speed Force, this once-in-a-lifetime gamble that he doesn't sure it can work, what's the first thing he says? Dead. Because that is dude bro to a T. No matter what the stakes are, it eventually all boils down to the dodgy relationship you have with your father. So seeing that moment, given the high church treatment at the Oscars, was for me the funniest part. The rest of it, the Will Smith Chris Rock part, I can't comment on because people will call me racist. That's the extent to which the discourse has deteriorated in the United States, that if you even comment on something like that, I think if the lesson here is that the reward you get for slugging someone in the face if they say something you don't like is an Oscar, then we're in a lot of trouble. But anyway, let's see here. Faisal Hadi says, "Good morning, Steve. Congrats on both of these milestones. Question, are there any legitimate hooks in Chaos by Tom O'Neill?" There's a book called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. It's about the Manson family and a lot of other stuff. And of course, there are hooks in the book because he casts his net over the whole of the Mediterranean Ocean. So yeah, in such a huge canvas, there will be so-called hooks. What Faisal is referring to here is when I talk about conspiracy theories, whether it's the theories themselves or literature about them, you always want to be looking for a hook, something that if you're not bought into the insanity, even so, if you're in other words, if you're still a normal person, you're still going to hear this little detail and say, that actually doesn't make sense. The rest of it's crazy, and all of you are crazy, but that detail doesn't make sense. Right? If there's a hook like that, then there is something legitimately to think about. And yeah, there are hooks in Chaos by Tom O'Neill, but it's so broad that there would have to be. Let's see here. Andrew Russell says, "Hi, Steve, and thanks for your content, in particular for this Q&A. A few questions from me. Number one, was there a trigger for your extended hiatus from your first career as a book critic? And if so, what was it?" Yeah, there wasn't one, but there was a bad week. Ridiculous. Don't ever make life decisions on the basis of a bad week. There's going to be a week right after it. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But what Andrew's referring to here, for those of you who are new, is that I was a book critic and a book columnist and a book section editor for a long time in the American Midwest. And then I stopped. And for a long time, for 25 years, I was a retail bookseller. I did no book reviewing of any kind. And for some insane reason, thought I couldn't do both at the same time. And it was only after that that I decided to get back into book reviewing. And make up for lost time. But yeah, there was a bad week of triggers where there are some unsavory parts to freelance book reviewing, which is what I am. I don't actually. I always say I don't have a venue. I guess I do, right? Because I'm the book section editor for a newspaper in northern Georgia. If that's not a venue, if being the editor of the section is not a venue, I don't know what is. But I still do a lot of freelance book reviewing, and any of you who do freelance book reviewing will know there are some unsavory bits to it. Editors will step in and water down your work. Editors might even, sin of all sins, add prose to your review without telling you and publish it so that you can't take it back. If it's a print newspaper, you can't do anything about it. And you didn't write it. It's got your name on it, but there's a part of it you didn't write. Or an editor will say to you, I've mentioned this before on this channel, an editor will say to you, they'll hand you a book, they'll say, here's what I want you to review. And also I thought I'd mention the author is a friend of the paper, which is code for you may not criticize this book. If it stinks, you can't rip it to shreds. But even if it's only okay, you have to find things in there to praise. And I know that that's part of the industry. I'm lucky that I have almost no interaction with that part of the industry, with anything like that. I'm not a sellout. And I have a large enough readership on my own anyway that's willing to follow me anywhere, that I don't really have to kowtow to that. You know what I mean? I'm not a 22-year-old freelancer who's just dying to break into the industry by any means necessary. I'm not that. If an editor were to tell me, I need a puff piece from you about this author's latest book, I want you to enthuse about it, I could tell them I'm not interested, and I wouldn't suffer at all. But I had a week of things like that. Sometimes they do happen in weeks. It just happened to me just a little while ago that I had a pretty bad week on the reviewing side of my life. And that did it. I thought, if I want to recommend books to people, which is the whole point of me reviewing, it's the whole point of me dealing with books, is either to recommend books or warn you away from books that would waste your time and money. I thought, if I want to do that, surely the honest, proletariat way to do that is to be a bookseller in a bookstore and deal with the customers directly without any intermediary editors or anything like that. So there wasn't one trigger, but there was a bad week. And then, let's see here. Number 2, what type of book is your least favorite to review? A self-published religious memoir, self-published business memoir. But I want to immediately blurt those things out because I do that every day. I review one of those every day, and it gets a little wearing. Both of those things can be done well, but oh boy, can they be done poorly. Oh boy, can they ever. But the real answer to the question, that's a little specific. The big answer to the question is exactly what I was alluding to, where you have a very friendly relationship with an editor, with the book section editor. You don't want that to go anywhere. You really enjoy that. You like joshing back and forth. You like the mutual respect. The editor sends you a book. They really want you to review it. They're not necessarily telling you that you have to like it, but the tone of their book section is such that they don't run attacks. They don't run reviews that tell reader, don't buy this book. I myself think those reviews are very valuable. I think it's a terrible shame that so many book review venues in the United States have eliminated those kinds of book reviews out of a sense of what? White glove, gentlemanly fair play? The books have price tags on them. They're asking you to pay money. I think it's a terrible shame that those reviews have largely gone away. But if you're in a relationship like that with an editor, in my case, you don't ever want to say no. You don't ever want to turn down an offer. So you are brought into a situation where, you can write to the editor and say, well, gee, I read the book and it's not very good. and sometimes the editor will say something along the lines of, well, do what you can with it. And what they mean is do what you can with it along the lines that I have already laid out for my section. That is probably the least enjoyable review to write, where you know you have to write an evaluative, balanced, generally positive feeling review of a book that on your own hook you probably would just either pass over or condemn. And then number 3, could you consider doing a starter kit on Russian politics / history? My interest is piqued by recent events. I could. I would be. There are a lot of people on BookTube, even in our little corner of BookTube, who are a lot more qualified to do that than I am. All right, we're at 30 minutes, so let's stop this and go on to the next one.